Hello listeners, how are you today? I hope you're doing well. Here's a brand new episode of the podcast for you. Several things before we start. First of all, the voting is now over in the Wispolep competition. Yes, the voting closed on Sunday the 6th of December at midnight. That was last night, in fact. I'll be announcing the results of the competition in an episode of the podcast soon, so stay tuned for that. Premium Lepsters, hello. I just want to let you know that I've uploaded several premium episodes covering language from my conversation with Lucy in the last episode. I went through the conversation again and picked out over 50 words and phrases that you might have missed or that I think are worth highlighting, and then I presented them to you with explanations, examples, a memory test, and pronunciation drills. So that's Premium 28, Parts 1 and 2, and it's in the Premium section now in the Luke's English Podcast app and on the website. Also, Premium Series 27 is underway, and I recently uploaded Parts 1 and 2 of that to the Premium section too. They contain some grammar and vocabulary language tips and practice with pronunciation drills too. Parts 3 to 8 of that series will be coming up in the next couple of weeks. If you'd like to know more about Luke's English Podcast Premium, including how to get the episodes and how they can really help your English in various ways, go to teacherluke.co.uk/premium info. You're listening to Luke's English Podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk. So welcome everybody. In this episode, I'm returning once again to the topic of the UK's royal family. This time I'm talking to my lovely wife about the royals because we've recently been watching season 4 of The Crown. And so royal stuff is definitely on our minds at the moment. Just in case you don't know, The Crown is a Netflix TV series about the British royal family. I expect that many of you will be aware of it too, and maybe you've also been binge watching season 4 recently, like us. Here's an episode all about it. So my wife, who is French, is particularly fascinated by the bizarre lives of my country's monarchs, and we often talk about the show and the real events it's based on. So we thought it might be interesting to share some of our thoughts with you in an episode of the podcast. If you haven't seen The Crown yet, and you're worried about spoilers in this conversation, I don't really think it's possible to spoil this show, as it's all based on real events which most people know about. In fact, listening to this before you watch the show could even help you understand it and enjoy it more. Also, if you have absolutely no plans to watch The Crown, or if you're just unable to watch it because you don't have a Netflix subscription or you're not going to buy the DVDs when they're released, then I think that you can still, enjoy listening to this because it's not just about a TV show, it's about the royal family. And so it's not, I think it's something that everyone knows about. It's a subject that you should be able to understand and follow and find relevant. So it's not just for people watching the show. I know what some of you will be thinking. You'll be thinking, Luke, do you recommend The Crown as a good show for learning English? Well, yes, I would say so. I think so. I think it's a good idea to watch The Crown. If you're looking for TV series on Netflix to help with your English, then The Crown would be a good show to watch, generally speaking, as long as you genuinely enjoy it. And because obviously if you enjoy it, that helps, doesn't it? Because that's going to mean that you'll take pleasure from it, you'll want to watch it and all those things, motivation and so on. So as long as you genuinely enjoy it, and I think that most people agree that The Crown is good and that it's interesting, high drama, it's beautiful to look at, there are great actors, it's an interesting topic. So I think that most people should enjoy it. Also, you should watch it, but also be aware that the characters speak in a very posh accent, which is not how most people speak. Obviously, it's the royal family, and they are the poshest people in the world, and they speak in a posh accent too. It's not massively different to, let's say, normal English or maybe just standard RP. It's not that different, but you should be aware that they do sound very posh and they have a posh accent. It's important to hear a wide variety of accents in English because this is the nature of the language that you're learning. It's a diverse language and you need to take that into account when learning it. You should be able to understand the various accents and hopefully be able to identify them to some extent anyway. So while you're watching The Crown, if you watch it, you do need to think to yourself, I am listening to posh English here. Okay? But anyway, overall, yes, I think it's a good show to watch and can definitely be useful for your English. To get more specific tips about how to use my TV shows, they're not your TV shows, Luke. I didn't mean to say it like that. To get more specific tips about how to use TV shows like this to improve your English, then you can listen to episode 660 of my podcast, which is all about using TV shows and films to improve your English. Episode 660. So, The Crown is currently in its 4th season, which deals with the period in which Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister, and when Prince Charles married Lady Diana Spencer, later to be known as Princess Diana. So this is the late 70s, the 80s and the early 90s. In this conversation, you'll hear my wife and me talking in the usual rambling fashion about things like this. So what we think of the show, including descriptions of how it looks and the production in general, the performances by some of the actors, accents you can hear in the show, especially the high RP, which is spoken by the Queen and other royals, as I mentioned earlier. What the show makes us think about specific members of the family, their stories, their relationships with each other, and how they are represented in the show. What the show makes us think about the institution of the monarchy itself, including some of the pros and cons of having a royal family, for the country as a whole, but also for the individual members of the family itself, who enjoy the luxuries of their privilege, but who are also bound by the duties that they have to the crown. We also assess the reign of Elizabeth II and talk about Operation London Bridge is Down, which is the code name that refers to the official plan for what will happen in the days after the death of Queen Elizabeth II, when that inevitably happens. It's actually quite extraordinary and makes you realise how significant the Queen is to the nation. We also end up talking about the recent scandal involving Prince Andrew, who is one of the Queen's 4 children. He's the 3rd one, in fact. I don't know if you're aware of this, but it was big news in the UK, and it kind of still is. It's actually a disturbing and shocking story, but it's also fascinating. So I'm referring to Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein, who was convicted of the trafficking and prostitution of underage girls. Epstein died in prison in pretty suspicious circumstances. You probably know about it. The official story is that Jeffrey Epstein committed suicide, but plenty of people believe that he was killed in order to prevent the truth from coming out. So that was Jeffrey Epstein. Anyway, Prince Andrew was allegedly one of Epstein's friends or associates, let's say, and in fact one girl in particular who was a victim of Epstein's has made claims against Andrew specifically. In response to those claims, Andrew chose to conduct an interview with the BBC in 2018, I think. In the interview, he wanted to deny all the claims against him, but the interview didn't go very well, and it was a bit of a PR disaster for Andrew. PR meaning public relations. It was really bad for his reputation. In fact, I think that the FBI want to talk to Andrew. There's a suggestion of possible prosecution if he ever goes back to the United States. I'm not entirely sure what's going on with it, but it's a big scandal, and the BBC interview was sort of fascinating and horrifying and weird and just bizarre, and I find it absolutely fascinating as well as disturbing, and I've been wondering for ages whether I should discuss it on the podcast. But anyway, keep listening to find out more about this whole story. So before we start properly, and we are going to start the conversation in just a moment, but before we do that, I think it will really help if I remind you of the basic family tree in the royal family. If I just name the royals again and just clarify their positions in the family, that will help you understand this conversation more easily. So there's the Queen, of course, Queen Elizabeth II. She's been Queen since her father, King George VI, died in 1952. And so, yes, she's been the Queen since 1952. And that's the longest reign of a UK monarch in history. Her husband is known as Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh. In season 4 of the show, the Queen is played by Olivia Colman and Philip is played by Tobias Menzies. The Queen's mother was also called Elizabeth, but she was commonly known as the Queen Mother. She died in 2002. The Queen had a sister called Margaret, known as Princess Margaret, played in the show by Helena Bonham Carter. Princess Margaret also died in 2002, less than 2 months before the Queen Mother, in fact. So, okay, the Queen, her sister, Princess Margaret, and the Queen Mother, they all feature in the show and in this conversation. Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip had 4 children. The oldest is Charles, the Prince of Wales, and the heir to the throne. He's the next in line to the throne. Charles married Lady Diana Spencer in 1981, and she became Princess Diana, of course. They had 2 children. The first is William, now the Duke of Cambridge, and married to Kate Middleton, who is now the Duchess of Cambridge. They have 3 children. The oldest is George, and he is third in line to the throne after Charles and William. Charles and Diana's second child is Harry, who is now married to Meghan Markle. Harry and Meghan are to some extent cut off from the royal family as they chose to leave their public duties fairly recently, and they were quite heavily criticised for that. William, Kate, Harry and Meghan and their kids don't actually feature in the show, but they do come up in this conversation. Charles and Diana's marriage ended in divorce in 1992. Diana, of course, died tragically in a car crash in Paris in 1997. Charles later married Camilla Parker Bowles, who he'd actually been romantically involved with since before he even met and later married Diana. So Camilla Parker Bowles is his kind of long-term romantic interest, let's say. His lover, the one that he really loved. He's now actually married to her. Charles and Camilla are now known as the Duke and Duchess of Cornwall. Okay? The Queen's other children are Princess Anne, Prince Andrew and Prince Edward. So that's probably enough information about the family tree there, but I decided it was probably a good idea to remind you of their names and their positions in the family, just so you definitely know who we are talking about. Anyway, I won't go on much longer here in the introduction, I promise, except to say that my wife enjoys being on the podcast from time to time, and she loves talking about this topic, but she's a little bit self-conscious about speaking English in front of my entire audience like this. But I've assured her that my audience are all lovely and non-judgmental and that she has nothing to worry about. So, listeners, don't let me down, okay? Right then, I hope that you can now enjoy sharing some time with us in our living room, having quite a long and rambling conversation about the crown and all things royal. And here we go.
Because if I just speak like that, it's weird. Because I feel like I'm more into it.
Yeah, exactly. You feel like you're on the radio.
Exactly. I feel like I'm on a podcast, maybe.
Yeah, it's odd. It's good that you feel like you're on a podcast.
You're not fed up with my humor after 10 years.
No, I'm just slowly starting to get it.
Actually, my humor improving, right?
You're learning from the master.
Yeah, well, it takes one to know one.
No,
still not.
Still not getting that right. It takes, no, that is right. It takes one what?
Master?
A master, yeah, so you got it right. Yay!
11 years. Nearly
11 years.
11.
Nearly
Imagine
11 years, yeah.
In 2 months, it could be 11.
Yeah. Wow.
Woohoo.
Wow. Okay, so here we are in the cozy confines of our living room.
What, it started?
Yeah, we've started now.
People are going to hear that?
I don't know, depends.
Because usually you say hi.
See, now I'm going to keep it in because there's you going, oh, people are going to hear that. And if I don't include it, then everyone will be like, what? What's she talking about?
Starts well.
You always say that at the beginning of every conversation we have on this podcast. Oh, starts well. So, here we are in the cozy confines of our living room. Mm-hmm. The little one is in bed. Mm-hmm. Do you think she's asleep?
I hope so.
Or is she listening in on this?
Maybe.
I think she's asleep. Normally there's a period of silence which suggests that she's gone to sleep.
No, it's quite late. I think she's asleep.
Yeah. It's sometimes difficult to get her to go to sleep, isn't it, these days? We're talking in slightly hushed tones.
Do I have to speak louder?
It's probably better just so that your voice comes through, but it's naturally we're going to speak in slightly hushed tones.
Okay.
But if I keep the volume levels up, then it should still capture our voices.
Okay.
But it's like we're on a late night radio talk show, isn't it?
Saturday night podcast.
Exactly. The late night, Saturday night discussion show on Luke's English podcast. Welcome back onto the podcast, my wife.
Thank you for having me.
Strange word. Thank you for having me.
Isn't it what you say?
You got abducted by aliens there for a second. Thank you for having me. It is pleasant to share the company of a human. Okay, so right. So what's been going on? Why are we going to talk together tonight? I mean, normally we don't talk to each other.
Yeah, exactly. Just once in a while.
No, I mean on the podcast. I mean, why? What's the plan?
You tell us.
Okay. Well, we've been watching The Crown on Netflix. It's one of the things that we watch. In fact, it's you watch a lot of stuff. Normally, you watch your stuff and I watch stuff, and then there are some shows that we watch together. Mm-hmm. And The Crown is one of those shows. And we
agree. That's watchable for both of us at the same time.
I think so. So we are nearly at the end of... Is it season 4?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. You've finished it, but I've got one episode to go because for some reason...
cheated.
You cheated. You watched an episode without me.
I can rewatch it.
Yes. That's the plan. So the idea is to talk about The Crown.
It's not as if there was a big suspense. Suspense?
Suspense. Yeah, we basically we know what's going to happen. It's based on true things. No spoilers possible.
Exactly.
Although I guess people listening to this might not know all of the events that happened in the history of the royal family. The royal family. There's only one. Yeah,
true.
Well, when we say the Queen, everyone knows it's the Queen of...
Yeah, I'm really amazed by that. Yeah. I mean, when we say the Queen, there is only one, despite that the world having other queens. Mm-hmm. So she has such a big imprint.
Yeah, that's true. In people's heads. Yeah, that's right. You are, as a French person, as a French national, you are a Republican, aren't you?
Yes.
Yes. So, and
we
yet
chopped off heads.
You chopped off heads. The heads of your royal family. Well, we could go into that, but I mean, is The Crown popular in France?
Yeah, I think it is. Actually, I haven't talked about it with my friends, but I think it is. Yeah.
I think it's
amazing.
It's huge in France. I mean, it's huge.
I think worldwide.
In the States as well. But my point is that in places that are officially republics, somehow the royal family or the story of the royal family still holds people's attention. What's the appeal?
I don't know. I think I'm a bit... I never know how to pronounce this, but biased.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
Because I'm totally obsessed.
Why? What's so great about it?
Well, I think it's because of you. Maybe I wouldn't be that into it because I find it strange, the whole thing, and I find it fascinating and very interesting, politically, and maybe we'll talk about it, that the fact They can't vote. They can't discuss about politics, even if there's a head. The Queen is the head of state and the head of Commonwealth. So if anything, it's political, but she's not political.
Yeah, she can't be.
So that's very fascinating.
I guess that's because we had our own little revolution back in the 17th century. And
a discreet one.
Well, I don't know if it was discreet. It wasn't discreet at all. There was a lot of bloodshed, lots of fighting, and it was not discreet at all. Oliver Cromwell and so on. Basically, yes, Charles I. There was a civil war. Anyway, the parliamentarians versus the monarchists, and King Charles I, his head was chopped off. And we had a kind of republic. It was the English Commonwealth, it was called, and Cromwell was the de facto leader, and he wasn't very fun at all, and lots of Catholics got killed, I understand. I hope I'm not mixing up my history.
Maybe you can call your parents.
I probably should. Anyway, we did have a revolution. We did chop the head off our monarch and then reinstated the monarchy again afterwards, but with certain conditions. Mm-hmm. And the conditions were, look, the Parliament will handle the executive power stuff, and the figurehead can be just that, a figurehead, the head of state. But if the monarch attempts to actually use their symbolic power, then watch out. Ooh, heads might roll again. Just remember that. So I guess one of the reasons why our royal family has managed to continue is that they don't get involved in politics. They don't actually have any opinions of any kind at all.
And they can't even vote.
They can't even vote, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is strange, isn't it?
It is. So because this is a right, and they're deprived from this right.
It's a human right.
So that's interesting.
This for me is an interesting point about The Crown, going back to the TV show, that one of the things that this reveals about the whole system is that potentially it's quite cruel for the members of the royal family itself. Like first of all, they don't have certain human rights, like they can't vote. But also, the system of the royal family seems to make life quite miserable for them.
They're all miserable. I hope it's better in real life, but it's so sad. No one's happy.
Do you think that it's...
They look all gloomy, you know?
Do you think that's normal, though, that in any family, in any section of society, if you follow them through their lives, that there will be, pain and misery and depression and bad things?
Yeah,
or is it just them?
No, of course it's not just them, but you have up and downs for everyone. But if you take like Charles, I mean, from the very first beginning, you remember when we started to watch The Crown, when he was sent to this private school and everything, and you follow his childhood and in teenage years, and now like this failure of a marriage with Diana and his love for Camilla. I mean, you don't see any happiness. So of course it's fiction and it's dramatized and everything, but if it's based on real events, I don't know.
This is a kind of tricky thing. So basically,
yeah, you need to. Sorry, do you want to interrupt?
No, it's all right. You can interrupt. You're my wife. If anyone can interrupt me, it's you. Actually, this brings up a thing. It's difficult to know how to approach this properly. I've got various questions and stuff, but these are themes that we're kind of going to touch on in this conversation.
Okay.
Generally, though, yes, we enjoy The Crown, don't we?
A lot.
What are the things that are pleasant about watching it?
So many things. It's very well made. I love the fact it's like by decade by decade. Every 10 years.
Not dickhead, by dickhead. It could be like, which royal dickhead are we going to look at this week? This time it's Prince Andrew. No, decade by decade. Yeah,
so it's very interesting. First, politically, when you're not, of course I know like the main events, but the relationship between like Churchill and the Queen, and even like just the Prime Minister with the Queen, how it works and everything. This is so different from everything I know.
Meaning understanding our constitution.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting on this point of view. Plus, let's face it, there is a bit of drama and all the gossips involved and everything. There is a bit of, it's juicy sometimes.
You want to be able to have a sneak peek inside Buckingham Palace to see what's going on. Mm-hmm.
And what I find it like completely amazing is the resemblance between the characters and the people in real life. I mean, the people who did the casting, just, wow. They did an incredible job, because what I do now is when I check pictures online to check how the real members of the royal family look like when they were young, and say, oh yeah, wow, the actress looks the same and everything.
I think it's kind of part of the experience of watching The Crown is everyone's Googling.
You do fact checks and everything. I love it. After each episode, or even during the episode, I fact checked everything. It's like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, certainly the casting has been amazing, and they picked out...
Wow. Olivia Colman, she is brilliant. She amazing. I think it's her last season.
And all the others. I mean,
Philip, brilliant.
Both Philips.
Yeah.
I mean,
Matt Smith.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And the other guy, I can't remember his name, the actor who plays the older Philip. But in fact, quite a star-studded cast of great actors, and it's just pleasant to watch these great actors doing their thing. I think the one who steals the show for me is Helena Bonham Carter.
Ah, brilliant.
As Princess Margaret. I mean, she's just amazing. She just eats up the scenery in every single scene that she's in. And she's she's got this kind of she's got a great sense of humor, but a sense of tragedy and lots of things.
And she's so sad. She's depressed and sad in her life. For instance, it's like she's a second, so she will never be queen. She's a senior member of the family, but she can't do whatever she wants. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to spoil the story. But at the end,
and the fact,
because you have new heirs with Charles. Kids and the kids of the Queen, so she gets relegated.
Yeah,
and it's really sad because she has nothing in her life. It seems, I don't know, but
well, I mean, this is another case of the family structure or the system kind of ruining her life in a way that she fell in love with someone, but basically the Buckingham Palace said no, you can't be with this person because he's not the right profile, and so that kind of broke her heart. And then it turns out that she just needed to find some meaning in her life, and it was to be an important person in the royal family. But even that changed as you said, as she got relegated and she became more and more redundant. So another sort of sad story.
And it feels, but again, this is fiction, and I'm sure in real life it's maybe not that harsh. There is no space for feelings. It's like the duty, the crown, the duty. You do it because this is your duty. End of the story. So relegate your feelings for another life, but not this one.
Yeah, it's pretty tough.
And sometimes it's a bit distressing to watch, because this is people's life. So
yeah, that's right. Other things that we were talking about, things that are nice to watch. Other things are that it's just sumptuous, which is a nice word. Sumptuous, meaning it's kind of grand, luxurious, of high quality. We get to see, how people at the very pinnacle of society live and the conditions that they live in. And we're talking about how...
Well, it seems a bit boring, right?
Yeah.
They go hunting and playing. Maybe you'll explain what the game is. I didn't get it. Edel, Dibble.
What?
There is an episode where with Margaret where they do Edel, Dibble. No, okay.
Just weird posh people stuff. Like posh people play weird games and have slightly odd family traditions and things. Playing little parlor games.
Okay.
There are lots of sitting around and kind of just being royal.
Yeah, just nothing happens much.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that the high-ranking members of the family are busy. We don't necessarily see all of the charity work.
Yes, it's true, because I think I follow the press about the royal family, and they're always like everywhere doing charity works, representation. You don't really see that much. A bit with Diana at the end, but it's a bit like, I don't know, it's not very...
Yeah, it's not emphasised that much.
Emphasized.
I mean, we see like Charles and Diana going off on their tour of Australia, which is, I don't know, how was it, 6 weeks or something like that, or a long time. And there's obviously a lot of work involved in that, lots of public appearances, interviews, press events, and things like that. So, it's not that they never did any work, but having said that, there is quite a lot of kind of hanging around Buckingham Palace, kind of going, oh, well, so it seems that, normal people do this. Oh, how interesting. Lots of that kind of thing, and drinking tea and parlour games and stuff. Buckingham Palace, it doesn't look like such a great place.
It looks
dull.
Gloomy and stuffy and old and not very welcoming.
Yeah, and the architecture... Although obviously there are these amazing paintings which are very historic and stuff, the design of the place is a bit plain and probably a bit depressing to spend time in.
Yeah.
I think the Queen prefers Windsor Castle, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I think so.
But you feel there is always someone behind the door, like, because you have like people working there, so it's grand, but you always feel there is.
Yeah.
A sneaky person looking at you.
Sorry, madam. Sorry, ma'am. I wasn't listening in. Well, maybe a little bit. Yeah, kind of servants hanging around.
I think what's fascinating is we see the royal family as public members, and we only see what they want us to see. So with the crown, you feel like you open the door and you enter and you see what's happening behind closed doors. That's why...
Yes.
It's interesting.
Yes, exactly. I've written some notes here. Epic story, a saga, a big family saga. We follow it across generations, and big moments in history. It's like a soap opera, but it's the highest budget soap opera on the largest scale ever. What else did I want to mention? So... performances and actors, we've talked a little bit, mentioned that we're impressed by the actors and their performances and the casting and the way that they've transformed people's appearances to look like different people. Like I watched an interview with the actress who plays Princess Anne, and her accent's so different. So she's got like this sort of estuary English accent. She sort of sounds a bit like a Cockney, like that.
Well, you're really brilliant, you... Brits, to modify your accent. It's like in Killing Eve, Jodie...
not Jodie Whittaker. What's the name of the girl in Killing Eve? She's amazing. Yeah,
she can get so many different accents, the Russian accents and the posh accents, everything. And you hear her in real life, and she has what, a Brummie accent?
No, she's Scouser. She's a Scouser. She sounds like this. That's Jodie Comer, who's not in The Crown, unfortunately. No.
She's brilliant.
She's absolutely brilliant. Jodie Comer is in Killing Eve. She's a Scouser. She sounds like this when she speaks normally. But then in Killing Eve, she's got all these different accents.
Yeah,
she can sound brilliant. Posh. She can speak with these different foreign accents and things. Yeah, amazing. I guess maybe with the diversity of accents that we have, it's people have an ear for these for the diversity, and English is a very diverse language. I was talking to an accent coach about it on the podcast recently. So the accents is an interesting thing. I mean, you love the accents that you hear in The Crown, don't you?
I love it. I'd love to speak the same, unfortunately for you.
But don't you notice, can you not hear that they have a super posh accent?
Yeah, but I love it anyway.
Because I don't think anyone really speaks like that outside the aristocracy. Yeah. I mean, I'm trying to think of examples. So let's see.
But basically, if I could speak with your accent, I'd be already like super happy.
Just modern standard RP. but not super mega like Royal Windsor Castle RP, which is something else entirely. So I'm trying to find an example. So this is I'm going to play a little clip, and this is from the episode where an unemployed guy called Michael Fagan in, I think, 1982, an extraordinary moment. He actually broke into Buckingham Palace. He managed to sneak into the house without anyone noticing him twice. And the second time he did it, he got all the way into the Queen's bedroom, and he sat down in the room with her and had a conversation with the Queen.
Scary.
For, I don't know how long it was. It may have been a few hours. Amazing moment. Yeah, I mean, on one hand, scary that someone could get in and get that close to the Queen. But in fact, it turns out that he wasn't threatening to her. He just wanted to talk to her.
He wanted her to speak to a normal person.
He wanted her to speak to a normal person, yeah.
I didn't know this, actually.
Yeah.
That happened.
Amazing. I mean, it's a bit tricky because we don't know what happened in that room. Mm-mm. We don't know specifically what was said. So watching a dramatized version of it is a little bit, I don't know, like, I'm not sure how I feel about that.
But is it true that he spoke to her?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what we know is that he broke in, he wasn't violent. The Queen, obviously she was alarmed, but she talked to him, and he I think she sat up in bed and he sat in a chair, and they had a chat for a few hours before her servant came in and he was discovered, and then he was arrested. Eventually he was put in a mental institution, but he was released after a few months. He wasn't mentally ill, or at least he wasn't long-term mentally ill anyway. I think genuinely he wanted to just have a conversation with the Queen, which I sort of understand. You see in the show, I mean, the trouble that he's having is that he's unemployed and he can't get a job. And Margaret Thatcher, the context is that Margaret Thatcher was sort of dismantling the welfare state and taking away a lot of support for unemployed people. This was how she sort of liberalised the British economy. And he felt like there was no one to turn to. And he decided, well, maybe the Queen will listen to me. An extraordinary moment, but this is how they kind of dealt with that in the show. And I thought that I'd play a little bit of this, just so that we can hear perhaps the difference in accents, and especially the Queen's accent, and just the way she says certain words. And maybe when I highlight it, it'll be easier to hear how she does have an accent that's different to mine, for example. I hope this isn't too loud. Let's see.
What is it you'd like me to do?
Save us all from her.
Save us all from her. That's his London accent. Save us all from her. What is it you'd like me to do? Save us all from her.
Who?
Thatcher. She's destroying the country. We've got more than 3 million unemployed. That's more than at any time since the Great Depression. Doesn't that bother you?
Yes, it bothers me greatly.
It bothers me greatly. Greatly.
That's more than at any time since the Great Depression. Doesn't that bother you?
Yes, it bothers me greatly. But there's nothing I personally can do about it.
There's nothing I personally can do about it. A bite. I'd say about, but a bite. There's nothing I can do about it. Maybe it's just that...
Yeah, but that's the Queen. I don't want to speak like the Queen.
They all sound like that.
Yeah, well, the Queen is a bit particular, no?
Yeah.
It's different. Take Margaret.
Yeah, but she's not in the royal family. That's the point I'm making. The aristocrats have got this particular
she's
voice.
in the royal family.
Margaret Thatcher.
No, Margaret, the sister. Yeah,
Princess Margaret.
Yeah, Princess Margaret.
She does a bit, yeah.
Okay.
Maybe not as specific as the Queen's. Let me just play a little bit more.
When you've been in my position as long as I have, you see how quickly and how often a nation's fortunes can change.
When I do stuff about accents, I think sometimes my listeners or learners of English, they find it hard to pick up on things that I notice, like vowel sounds, like the way she says, that's what it's about. They won't necessarily notice a bite rather than about.
Yeah, I didn't.
But people do notice the tone.
Yes.
So this kind of tone,
exactly,
which it's very sort of clear, in a very clear register, and every word appears to be very clearly pronounced like this, very clipped, kind of clear tone, which is part of it. But I'm sort of talking about other things like, especially vowel sounds. Like, listen to the way she says words like back.
Joblessness, recession, crises, war, all of these things have a way of correcting themselves.
All of these things have a way of correcting themselves.
Countries bounce back.
There you go. Countries bounce back. Back. Not back, but countries bounce back, which is almost like an eh sound. Back, not back.
Okay, she has a posh accent, but is there a regional background in her accent?
No.
No, not at all. Okay.
Which is interesting, isn't it? Because she is... Well, I mean, she doesn't have a Scottish accent. I mean, it's English. I don't know if Scottish aristocrats... I don't know if Scottish aristocrats speak like this, or if maybe Scottish aristocrats have a slightly Scottish... I'm going to do Sean Connery now. Maybe Scottish aristocrats sound like Sean Connery. But so certainly English... But no regional thing. But I mean, RP doesn't really have. Maybe with some sounds like I'd say podcast, and someone from the north would say podcast. Maybe little things like that. Yeah, but no, it doesn't really have a regional thing. Except that only aristocrats speak like this, and you tend to find that the aristocrats live in the home counties. The county around London. Yeah. Should we have a bit more? Let's see if we can hear any more of those ah sounds that sound like eh.
People do, because they simply have to.
That's what I thought, that I'd bounce back, and then I didn't. First the work dried up, then my confidence dried up, then the love in my wife's eyes dried up, and then you begin to wonder, where's it gone? Not just your confidence or your happiness, but they say I have mental health problems now. I don't. I'm just poor.
Well, the state can help with all of this.
What state? The state has gone. She's dismantled it, along with all the other things we thought we could depend on growing up. A sense of community, a sense of, obligation to one another, a sense of kindness. It's all disappearing.
I think you're exaggerating.
Exaggerating? I think you're exaggerating. I'd say exaggerating. I think you're exaggerating. Anyway, I just wanted to show that. We can't dwell on that too long, because it's starting to get a bit boring, isn't it, that? Is it? I don't know. Wasn't your favourite episode. Should we talk about individual royals? Should we get into the gossip stuff now?
Okay.
Well,
gossip of season 4.
Or maybe we can just talk about how does the show present these people, and do you think it has any... I mean, based on what we know, do you think it's reasonable or realistic? So what about the Queen? How does the Queen come out of this
as
show?
A bad mother. No, that's my main...
takeaway.
Yeah. Like with no feelings and no... Especially when Diana arrives and she has William and then Harry, and she doesn't want to leave a son, or at least William. There is only William. She doesn't want to tour without William, so they go to Australia with Charles, and she imposes the presence of William, say, yeah, but he's a baby and everything, and she doesn't want to leave William for 6 weeks. And when the Queen say, yeah, well, I left Charles when he was like, I don't know, a week old, or I don't know, but when he was a baby, and for her, she didn't even understand. She thought it was Diana's like demand, and that's it, Yeah,
that she's not very, she doesn't have very maternal...
Not at all.
She's not a very maternal figure, which is ironic considering she's the mother of the country and the Commonwealth, and this maternal figure in a political sense, but in her family, not maternal or loving, really, it seems.
And it's not only an impression, because sometimes you have some characters who just hint that, well, especially Anne when she speaks to the Queen and she refers to Diana, and you feel like there is something missing here.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the main thing which struck me in this season.
Yeah, that she seemed to be kind of a bad mother.
Because at the beginning with Charles, when it was Philip, was really strict with Charles when he sent him to this horrible school where he was bullied and really sad and everything. And you felt like the Queen didn't want him to go there, and she felt a little bit like just against Philip, Mm-hmm. You felt the maternal instinct of a mother protecting her son. But just not at all. Everything vanished.
Yeah. It maybe just somehow over the years the Queen sort of had to become a bit more cold or a bit more strong or tough just to be able to deal with it all, because it looks like it's such a difficult life. Especially what happened to her sister, and you see this time and time again through this different seasons. Like Margaret, the Queen's sister, kind of the Queen basically having to impose constitutional law or royal law or whatever it is on her sister, and it must have taken its toll on the Queen too. That she probably had to close off part of that. The emotional side, maybe.
No, that's actually impressive, because, there is a scene when Charles and Diana are just on the verge of breaking up, and they come to complain to her about each other. And it's almost if she says, don't bother me with your shenanigans, just it's childish. Your duty is to stay married because you're going to be the king and the queen. End of the story. So she has a very strong sense of duty. Yeah. And that's admirable, because she became queen she was 25, 20, 23, 25?
Very young.
Very, very young. Unexpectedly, because abdication and her father...
Her uncle was supposed to be the king. Then it was her father,
exactly.
and then he died sort of fairly young from cancer, and suddenly, she had to be the monarch.
And maybe she was destined to something completely different, like just a princess, living a royal life, but maybe not constricted to the crown and the sense of duty and this public figure that everybody knows, and every move you make is watched and criticized, and that must be difficult. And maybe that's why she closed off as well. Just my duty is the crown, so I do it. And that's why I think she will never abdicate.
Oh no.
Even COVID is not going to make her abdicate.
No,
because apparently she's self-isolating in Windsor, I think. Windsor. It's been months, and they reduced the staff and everything. So people say, is she gonna come back to London or not?
I see.
You see, there is rumors Charles is gonna step in. But after The Crown season 4, I think nobody wants Charles back.
Should we talk about Charles and how he comes out of this? Does he come out of it well, sympathetically, badly? What do you think?
It's horrible.
How?
At the beginning of the season, you feel sympathetic for him because he's in love with Camilla, and Camilla got married with someone else because I think the Queen Mother just did some, she pulled some strings because she didn't want Charles to marry Camilla.
Because Camilla was sort of involved with someone else, and she had been fairly sexually promiscuous.
Yeah.
And back in those days, that was still considered to be a no-no. And they wanted a pure girl to fulfill the fairy tale image of the princess. So old-fashioned.
So at the beginning, you feel for him because he's not really happy, and he has his love who's married to someone else and everything. And then he met Diana. So what I learned is he was dating Diana's sister, older sister, and he met Diana, and then the family thought that was a great deal. They invited her to, I never know how to pronounce that.
Balmoral.
It's Balmoral. I thought it was
Sandringham. Oh, was it Sandringham? I'm not sure which one.
No, maybe it's Balmoral weekend.
Listeners, by the way, Balmoral is like a royal residence in Scotland, and Sandringham is a royal residence is it East Anglia? Hold on. It's in England. It's in England. Whereas Sandringham is it's not Sandringham. They would say Sandringham. Sandringham Castle. I think it might be in Norfolk or Northampton or something like that. Norfolk, yeah. Norfolk, all right.
So,
but I think it's Balmoral where she was invited to Balmoral.
So she's invited there. She's really young. She's not even, I think, 20. She doesn't know anything about life. She works in a primary school in London. She lives with like friends. So she's like a normal, like well-born girl, but having a normal life.
Yeah,
like working to make a living, and
she's connected.
Yeah.
She's an aristocrat too, but sort of not in any danger of having to fulfill a public duty until suddenly she meets Charles. He sort of quite likes her, and
suddenly
she goes to Balmoral and she just impresses everyone.
Yeah, because she's funny, outgoing, and she's beautiful. She comes from a very well-connected and very well-established family. I think her grandmother is a lady in waiting or something. I haven't identified, but the grandmother is in the circle of the Queen.
She's like mates with the Queen Mother, right?
Yeah, but...
Oh, what is a lady in waiting?
Isn't it like a person who follows the Queen and who's kind of a friend, but it's also a job at the same time?
Like a professional friend. According to Wikipedia, a lady in waiting or court lady is a female personal assistant at a court. Like a personal assistant to the royals, attending on a royal woman or a high-ranking noblewoman. I think that she was the lady in waiting to the Queen Mother, the Queen's mum. So she was kind of like,
she's in the circle, and so everybody's impressed with Diana, and the trap is set up.
The trap is set. And basically it is decided by the powers that be in the upper echelons of the royal family that Diana will be married to Charles, and she fits the bill.
She'll fit the bill, exactly.
Yeah. But Charles is in love with Camilla. Diana doesn't really know what she's doing because she's too young. She's got no real life experience.
I think they met 6 times before the wedding.
Mm-hmm. God, only 6 times?
I think. I read that somewhere, so maybe it was...
Yes. And it turns out that they were not really made for each other at all.
It's horrible, this first interview after the engagement, when a journalist asked Charles, "Oh, are you in love?" And what does he say?
Yes.
It depends on what you mean.
Whatever love means.
Whatever love means. And it's so shocking. Poor Diana. Because Diana said, yes, of course. You know, she's so candid. You know?
Yeah.
No, I was really sad for Diana, because in every episode you see what she goes through.
Yeah.
Okay, there is a part of fiction, but ultimately what we read in the press and what the royal biographers and experts, I don't know what a royal expert is, but, you know, like people who are really into the subject, said she was like not happy from day one, and Charles was just with Camilla and he never stopped loving her. And when she said famously there were 3 in this marriage, I think it was from the beginning. So it's really, really sad. She
was like a sort of a pretty little flower that was just coming into bloom, and then it got picked and slowly crushed.
You're quite lyrical, yeah.
Do you want to hear that moment where Prince Charles goes, well, yeah, whatever love means?
The real one or the
This
crown
is the real one. And this is just an example of, I mean, Charles, come on, mate. He was so clumsy.
Yeah.
And it, you know, poor Diana. I mean, on one hand, she was innocent, and she was described as a bit of an airhead by some. But, she was just young. She didn't know what she was getting into. She thought she was in love with him and stuff like that. But then you can see at certain moments, Charles's real feelings were revealed. And it's quite shocking, really. Let's listen to that clip. Here we go.
The relationship between the two sides has sometimes shown a certain amount of strain. But that had all vanished when the Prince and his lady stepped out into the garden of Buckingham Palace and faced the cameras.
She was an absolute stunner.
Okay, this is one of those TV shows. It's a clips show, and they've got like D-level celebrities commenting on stuff. So I don't know who this guy... She was an absolute stunner. I don't know who this guy is.
Absolute gorgeous woman. And then you look at him, you think, whoa, she's marrying her granddad.
It was amazing when they first did that photo shoot. We first got to sort of meet Diana, this woman who was going to one day be our queen.
Okay, so let's just... Okay.
Sort of 17th century figure.
Do you find it a very daunting experience that now you're about to marry the Prince of Wales?
It is, but I've had a small run-up to it all in the last 6 months. And next to Prince Charles and I can't go wrong. He's there with me.
He clearly didn't want to be there. And it's easy to sit here now and say that's the fact. But when you were watching it, it's like you could see his mum's boot print on the back of his jacket.
Are you in?
You could see his mum's boot print on the back of his jacket.
What does that mean?
That means his mum, the Queen, had kicked him into the room. She'd forced him to do the interview.
It's really uncomfortable to watch.
Yeah.
Love. Lovely little question. Very typical question to ask people who've just got engaged.
And I suppose in love.
Are you in love? Are you happy? Are you in love? And Charles says, yes, whatever love means. Something like that.
Of course.
She says, of course.
And I suppose in love.
Of course.
Whatever in love means.
Diana's...
Whatever in love means.
That's horrible.
But, I mean, come on, Charles. Have a bit more tact. That's very insensitive for him to do. Yes, and he's like, whatever in love means. That's his version of like funny, witty banter. Yes, we're in love. whatever in love's means.
Yeah, like, exactly the right moment to say that.
Yeah, really badly timed attempt at making a joke.
No, that's really, really sad. When the relationship develops in the story, it's really heartbreaking to watch because not only Diana was miserable, but he was as well. So he had, according to the Crown, very bad behavior, and you see it in so many occasions. It is despicable, really. And at the same time, he was forced into this trapped marriage and he's not in love with her. And I found kind of a bit harsh when the Queen thought Diana was difficult because, she had bulimia. She developed a bulimia food disorder.
Yeah.
Eating disorder because she was so unwell. And she said something true in the episode. Suddenly in one night, they expected me to become the Princess of Wales when she was just a normal person before, and suddenly she just steps in this world she doesn't really know, even if she's an aristocrat. And it's really painful to watch because the Queen said, "Oh well, she's difficult," and the Queen knew because there is a very interesting documentary on Netflix. It's Diana with her own words. She was recorded.
Yeah. By
a biographer, Andrew Morton, for the book. And she said that the Queen knew, everybody knew she had a disorder, but they blacked out.
They blanked it out.
Blanked it out.
Yeah. Not blacked out. That's when you drink too much and what happened? I have no memory of what happened because I was so...
I thought it was that. You blacked out that you don't want to see.
If you black out, it means that you just have a complete lapse of your memory, probably because you drank too much or you had a psychotic episode. But if you blank something out, BLANK, blank it out, it means you just sort of ignore it or force yourself to forget it. Yeah, there you go.
Let's say I make useful mistakes for your listeners.
Right. Yeah. That's right. There you go, listeners. You just learned two expressions thanks to my wife. To black out and to blank something out. Like blank something out. So they kind of blanked it out, the fact that she was clearly suffering from mental health issues. But this was the early 80s, and this was before the royal family sort of modernized, as it has done a little bit with the new generation, William and Harry. But even that has kind of gone wrong, hasn't it, a little bit? As Harry and William have seemed to have
really
had
sad.
Yeah, they've seemed to have had a split. And are we going to get into Meghan Markle and all that stuff? I don't know. But
that's really, really sad, especially when you remember them walking behind their mother's coffin, which was horrible to watch. I don't even know who decided one day that these poor kids had in front of the entire world. They had to walk behind the coffin, and you see them, because the documentary I watch, you see the footage, and they're like, wow, very stoic. You know, they don't cry. But they're so young, and you see these brothers, they're going to feel united because they lost their mother and everything. So that's very, very sad what's happening.
It is very sad. I mean, I guess making this point again, one of the things that's come out of this is the fact that...
I think it's duty which separated them. Because really. William, as the duty, is going to be the future king. Harry is the second, so he's really back in the line for being the heir of the throne. And considering what happened to his mother, he decided to protect his wife, and he doesn't want the same thing to happen to his wife, which is fair enough.
Yeah.
He lost his mother, and he said he also had some mental health issues after losing his mother and everything. So I really feel for him, because he's being trashed with his wife by the press.
Yeah.
Like, he's ungrateful, and he flew to go to California to live a lavish life and everything. When you see the newspapers, they don't realize what they write.
The newspapers,
they're horrible. The press in the UK, it's just terrible.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the worst things about the country is the press, or what's called the gutter press.
And when you believe it's only like maybe 10 people, 10 awful journalists, you know?
And a few papers, the Daily Mail, the Daily Express. But I mean, you know, a lot of other papers are getting stuck in there too, even more respectable ones like the Telegraph and maybe even the Times as well.
It's not the same.
It's not to the same extent that you get with the Mail and the Express and papers like that. And they are absolutely awful, the way that they treat public figures. And they've got absolutely no qualms about dragging people through the dirt, maybe even just making stuff up, just lying. Yeah, they are the scourge of the country. Those newspapers. They are being extremely cruel to Hagan and Mary. No, Harry and Meghan. So the point I was going to make again was that, so when you look at the royal family, there are various arguments for and against the monarchy, right? When the debate comes up of whether the monarchy should be abolished or not, which is not something that's been debated for a while now, but back in the mid-90s, when before Diana died even, when Charles's marriage to Diana had ended in divorce, Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, their marriage had ended in divorce. Anne and her husband, Captain Mark Phillips, that ended in divorce. It was just divorce.
Nobody's happy in this family.
It was a total disaster. And there was one year, I think it was 1994, which the Queen made a speech. You know, she always makes a speech at Christmas, and she described it as our annus horribilis, our horrible year, because of all these divorces. And also there was a big fire at Windsor Palace that year, and the palace was on fire. Very symbolic. It was like a really bad time.
The palace is on fire.
Yeah, well, it kind of was. Because it was totally symbolic of the state that the royal family was in. And at that time, lots of people were talking about whether we should just abolish the royal family or not. So that's a debate, actually, that hasn't really been had that recently, because basically thanks to William and Harry, this sort of young generation.
And their wives.
And their wives much more. Although, arguably it's kind of gone wrong. But that's the press looking to sell papers. But
to be fair, it's a new generation who's gonna save the monarchy, because Charles and Camilla, and apparently they're having a horrible backlash from the season 4. You know, the trolls on the internet are just getting out of control because they think they were horrible to Diana. So people revive. It revives all this, you know,
all this
drama and everything.
Bad feeling
because
and stuff.
I think when it happened, like when Diana died, everybody hated Charles and everything, and it took time for Charles to work on his reputation. And now I think he's seen as a nice grandfather who has his organic farm and everything. He's very involved in the environment, and so he has a nice posture. And he finally married like the love of his life and everything. So they look like a nice grandparents couple, you know, like the grandparents you want to see and everything. Mm-hmm. But apparently with the crown, it's like getting wrong at the moment. And to be honest, yeah, I think it's more like William and Kate. They look young. They look very serious in their jobs. Apparently, like, William had COVID and continued to work. So the press is praised them a lot.
Yeah.
And I think, that's really sad what happened with Harry and Meghan. But there was also a part of them making the monarchy a bit like glamorous again.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And everyone, you know, the thing that everyone said is like, yeah, William and Harry, they seem like normal people. I could go for a pint with them.
But we saw them growing up, you know?
Yeah.
Because Harry, I think, is a year older than me. And William is maybe 2 years older than his brother. Uh-huh. So they're 35, 37, 8?
Mid to late 30s now.
I grew up with them, you know, so I saw them in the newspaper all my life. And when I was a teenager, they were teenagers. So...
And they also learned...
In the older generation, they saw them growing up as well, because you had more information in the press and everything. You know, it's not...
Weirdly, Diana helped.
Yes.
The Diana was the one, really, because the boys learnt from their mother how to be a sort of normal person in a way, because that was the appeal of Diana, that she was, a princess, but that she was kind of... people could relate to her, and when she met people in the streets, she was brilliant with them, and she was able to be on their level. Whereas, you know, the other royals have got this kind of what's the word for it? Slight patronising thing. That kind of thing. Like if I met a royal, you're an English teacher. Really? That is, you know, really? You can make a living from that, can you? Jolly good. You know, that sort of talking down. Whereas Diana was more like the sort of person you could imagine would get up and dance when you put like a good Rolling Stones song on or something. She would dance to it, and lots of things like that. So she was, you know, I think the boys learnt how to be normal from her example. But the point I wanted to make again was that so this debate about whether the royal family should stay or should be abolished, and the arguments usually are the arguments normally focus on the benefits to the country and whether having a royal family is good for the country or good for the people in the country or not. But there is a
great appeal.
Yeah, I think the point of view that's winning on that is that the royal family are overall good for the UK, for tourism and other things. You know, like, it's a complicated one. I mean, there are arguments that say the royal family, the existence of this family perpetuates inequality in society and all this stuff. But what I'm getting to, what I'm trying to get to, is that The Crown, the TV show, really strongly shows us the effects of the monarchy on the people in the royal family itself. And arguably, it's just not good for them.
Just to come back on the inequality, they actually worked a bit on themselves, because Charles decided with his mother and William to reduce the members of family, senior royals, who had all this privilege, you know, and there was a famous conversation, I think. Andrew wanted his daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, to have the same level of duties and privilege as William, Harry, because they were the grandchildren of the Queen. And I think they were a bit like...
sidelined.
Yeah, sidelined, because they want to reduce to the minimum. Also, I think for the people to make a gesture to the people, a sign, to send a signal to the people, like, we're not just a bunch of privileged people doing nothing.
Yeah, we're not just a bunch of freeloaders.
Yeah, exactly, because they have allowance from the people, from the estates they have, and it's a bit like because they're Duke and Duchess, so from the duchy they have an allowance.
You're talking about who exactly?
But I think Charles gets money from.
There's a combination of things.
It's complicated.
Charles has got, I think, probably private property.
Yeah,
and he probably earns money from that, from farming, from rent and stuff like that. So he's probably a landowner. I think that he's probably got private property. Then there's the Duchy of Cornwall, which I guess is a sort of. It sounds so old-fashioned now, but it's basically like, I don't know, really.
I think they get money from
taxes, basically. There's some tax allowance that goes into a fund, and then that fund is used to pay them. But it's a combination. I mean, the argument about tax is actually quite easy to deal with, which is that it costs each person to maintain the royal family. It costs each person about £1 a year. It's not that much, really.
No, but I do hear the argument when you have a royal wedding, for instance, and we say, we have to step up like the security for Harry and Meghan. Apparently it costs like millions and millions. Or for instance, Frogmore Cottage, they were given in Windsor property by the Queen as a wedding gift.
Right. And
they refurbished and did a lot of work in it, and it cost, I think, 14 million paid by the people.
Yeah.
But they refunded it. They refunded the money because they left. So they were asked when they decided to leave the royal family to a fund. So I understand the point of view of people saying, we have to pay for their weddings, for their homes and everything.
Yeah,
it's
totally.
Especially when you do 14 million refurbishment in your home.
But totally.
I can hear the point.
But if you got a president and stuff like that, and
of course,
and the president,
but you elected the president.
Yeah, but
they impose to you.
It doesn't matter in any case.
Does.
Hold on a minute. It doesn't. The point I'm making is, I'm not defending the royal family. I'm just trying to, make a point that people make, which is that. So it costs a lot of money to pay for the royal family, but it costs a lot of money to pay for any head of state and the things that they do, right? So look, in France, you've got a prime minister. In the UK, we've got a prime minister too. And you've got a president too, and the president has his cars and his properties and his planes and all those things. In America too, the president, he lives a very lavish lifestyle, and that's very costly. So anyway, what am I trying to get at here? Where were we? I wanted to make the point about the mental health of the individuals in the royal family. And this is what I think has been highlighted here, is that they suffer. In the 80s, when Diana was there was no infrastructure at all for looking after the mental health of the people in the family. And the tradition had been, you just get on with it, don't you?
Yeah, very stoic.
Very, very stoic indeed. Yeah. And the times changed. Times changed. That kind of, just stiff upper lip, you just don't let your emotions get the better of you.
Time changes two directions. They have more support and maybe they're a bit more flexible. And also, I think William famously married a commoner, So,
Yeah.
Kate is a commoner.
Not an aristocrat. Her parents owned like a joke shop business. They sold merchandise.
Party pieces.
Yeah.
Name of the company.
They were essentially... I don't know if these distinctions even exist anymore, but essentially they were middle-class people.
Yeah, exactly.
That they were business people.
I think she was a hair hostess, Carol, Kate's mother.
Air hostess.
Yeah, well...
Not a hair hostess. Yeah. It's all right.
Okay, she used to work on a plane.
Okay. I understood what you meant. Maybe that was unfair of me to...
No, you're right. This is an English podcast after all.
I guess so.
And they created a company called Party Pieces, about party furniture. If you want to organize a party for your kids, like birthday, like balloons and everything. So they created that and they became rich. And that's it. They started with not much and they succeeded.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, she doesn't come from an aristocratic background, and I think they truly fell in love when they were in St. Andrews in university, Kate and William.
Yeah, good.
So it's a proper love story, and I think it changes everything.
Yeah, thank goodness for that.
And I think it would have been like before, he couldn't have married her. They wanted, like, because Diana, they wanted like a young aristocratic virgin. And now we're like with a commoner. And I remember the newspaper when they got married. A commoner in the royal family. It was really something, the commoner, it's where I got the word.
Yeah.
I didn't know this word.
It's definitely a very negative word, a commoner. It's a very negative word, that. So the royal family is interesting because it's slowly been reforming by degrees, slowly but surely. The death of Diana was a huge thing. And it really forced the royal family to take a good long look at itself. I mean, even after Diana died, there were days and days and days when Buckingham Palace didn't issue a statement.
Yeah.
And, it's in that film, The Queen, Helen Mirren and
Brilliant.
Michael Sheen as Tony Blair. And that just shows how, the Queen's attitude was like, this is a private matter. The death of Diana is a private thing. I shouldn't have to go in front of everyone and make a statement. We are grieving. This is private time. But Tony was like, look, Queen, I think you should really, Your Majesty, I think you should, this is my Tony Blair impression. I think you really ought to say something. And so she was like, oh, okay. And she did this speech to everyone. But the royal family learned, all right, we have to start acting a bit more like normal people. We can't be so distant and stuff. We could go on and on and on about this for ages, but I feel like there's one more thing I need to talk about.
Okay.
What do you know what it is?
Yeah, I think I have
Prince Andrew.
Yeah, I knew it for that.
I am obsessed by this. And I've never talked about it on the podcast.
Ooh.
Prince Andrew and the scandal. And it's
controversial.
Seriously controversial. We've been talking for an hour and 5 minutes. We could do a whole episode about the Prince Andrew, the infamous Prince Andrew interview with the BBC.
It's horrible.
It's
this guy is an argument himself to abolish the monarchy.
Just him on his own.
Yeah, seriously.
This is a very tricky point that Andrew could bring the whole thing down if this is not carefully managed. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we never ever see or hear from Prince Andrew ever again, that he will just be locked in some house in the countryside. He'll ride horses and shoot birds and just...
Like they did with their relatives,
Like they did with
some of their relatives.
That's a very sad thing that we learn from watching The Crown, is that there are cousins, that the Queen and Princess Margaret have cousins who are how to describe it really. They had developmental issues, they had learning disabilities, and they were just hidden from everyone and put into a special...
They were presented as dead.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the Queen said, no, they're dead. And Margaret, who deepened the topic, said, no, they're not dead. And they were like kept in a mental facility.
Yeah.
Somewhere, I don't know where. It's really sad, this story. I was really shocked. I've never heard of it before. And
yeah, that's
so cruel.
These cousins who were like, the Queen and Princess Margaret shared a grandparent with these cousins who... They had, hold on, royal cousins.
The Lyon-Beau family, the Queen Mother's side.
Okay. This is from news.com.au, an Australian website. The Crown's fourth season uncovers many secrets the royal family would no doubt prefer stay hidden. But none have shocked viewers more than the story of the Queen's two forgotten cousins. The storyline unfolds with two sisters in an asylum. It's like a sort of mental health facility, a mental hospital, lovingly staring at a TV screen and standing for the royal national anthem as images of the Queen arriving at the Royal Variety performance appear. The women in their 60s cradle a baby doll and proudly salute, breaking only to take pills handed to them by a nurse. The episode goes on to reveal that the siblings were not just fans of Her Majesty, they were her cousins, Nerissa and Catherine Bowes-Lyon. And the story behind their tragic lives has left many viewers appalled. Yeah, so they were basically hidden. They were officially recorded as being dead. So basically all evidence of them was completely hidden. And the thinking behind it was, well, this is the royal family, the bloodline, and the whole idea is that we are somehow better than everyone else. We are the royal family. And yet in the royal family there are, people who've got mental disorders and developmental disorders and stuff.
It could damage the crown, says the Queen Mother.
It could damage the crown.
Exactly.
So they were just...
always about the crown.
They were just neutralised. How sad. But anyway, the point there is that they were hidden away. Yeah. And so we're saying that Andrew might be hidden away too. But, it's actually very... It's fascinating and it's kind of grotesque in its fascination, the Prince Andrew thing, but also it's sort of actually quite disturbing and sad, really.
For me, is the image of entitlement.
Yes.
And it makes me sick.
Yeah, it's sickening, isn't it?
The guy thinks and acts as if he was above the law, and considering what is involved with?
Well, allegedly what he's involved in.
Allegedly.
We don't know.
I mean, nothing's happening. Like, it's just like riding his horse in Windsor, whatever.
I don't know.
And, I mean, but maybe you should develop the story about it because maybe it's obscure for most of
people probably don't know what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
So this relates to Jeffrey Epstein or Jeffrey Epstein, however you want to say it. So I guess most people will know about Jeffrey Epstein. A lot of people will know about Jeffrey Epstein because people, there's a theory that he was assassinated. But Jeffrey Epstein, so he was actually convicted. I don't remember when. Jeffrey Epstein was an American guy, a member of high society in the
working in finance,
but then he kind of he made all his contacts working in finance. He was in the elite high society in America, brushing shoulders with various high-level people, including Prince Andrew, Donald Trump, the Clintons, and numerous other people. And he was convicted, so he was found guilty of criminal offences. Oh, we've got to get this right. Epstein... conviction. All right. First criminal case, second criminal case, legal proceedings. Let's see. Basically, I believe that the criminal proceedings there's a lot of information here on Wikipedia, but essentially he was found guilty of, I guess it was trafficking of, was it underage girls?
Underage girls. He was forced, apparently, allegedly, but I think he was convicted, so it's not really allegedly. He used to present young girls to his rich friends and forced them to have sex with them.
Yeah. So when we say trafficking, we don't just mean, giving girls a plane ticket, but he was essentially taking them against their will and making them work as sex workers. And I think the allegation also is that that a lot of these girls were underage, that they were less than under the age of sexual consent. So this is, how should we put this? Paedophilia and forcible prostitution, dark stuff and really, really wrong stuff. Obviously, I don't even need to say that, but still. And so one of the people who was connected or named as someone involved in this activity was Prince Andrew. And And the allegation was, and one of the girls, that's it. It's girls who are coming forward and giving evidence and making claims and stuff. One of the girls, I don't remember her name, unfortunately.
I think it's Virginia Dufresne, or I don't know how you call.
Should we name her? Would that?
Well, it's in the newspaper. It's not as if we were.
No, I mean, would it be respectful or disrespectful to name her? I don't know. Anyway, Virginia Roberts Giuffre. Yeah, I'm not sure how to pronounce it.
Yeah. There was a picture of her at a party, I think in a London mansion when she was maybe 16, close to Prince Andrew.
Well, he's in the picture. He has his arm. He appears to have his arm around her waist.
Exactly. And she said that she was forced to have sex with him at several occasions at this party and another time in the US. And
she described moments when he had sex with her and stuff like that. So on one hand, if that's true, that's a scandal because he's basically having sex with prostitutes. But it's also true,
underage,
potentially underage. Either with her and with maybe other girls that have not come forward, and that he also was associating with someone who was trafficking underage girls, whether he knew about it or not. But according to descriptions of these mansions, there were lots of girls knocking around, and it must have been absolutely obvious.
Yeah.
So Andrew, being caught up in these allegations, instead of making a statement, distancing himself. Oh, yeah, also, he was photographed. So he went...
leaving...
when Jeffrey Epstein was arrested again, or he was going to be arrested again on new charges, Andrew travelled to New York. And this is what Andrew says. He was photographed talking to Epstein in Central Park. Yeah. Andrew said, I went to New York to meet him and stay with him for like 3 days in order to tell him I didn't want to associate with him anymore. Okay, couldn't you do that over the telephone? Could you not do it by email? You had to go and stay with him in his mansion to say...
let's party one more time and then we're not friends anymore.
Maybe. But there's photographs of him walking around Central Park with Jeffrey Epstein deep in conversation. I wonder what he was saying.
Plus the guy says, I stayed at this place because it was convenient. I mean, it's New York. Yeah. The guy is loaded. He can go to any places, any hotel, and he decides to go to Jeffrey Epstein's place when he knows the guy was convicted and is about to be charges are about to be pressed against him again. I mean,
we're jumping the gun a little bit. So
because
I'm trying to explain the context here. So yes, Jeffrey Epstein gets charged again with new offences of the same type, and Andrew is associated this time. And there are, all sorts of allegations flying around about Prince Andrew. So what does he do? Well, he organises himself, I think, without the consent of the Queen and without the agreement of Buckingham Palace or the top level people at the palace. He organises an exclusive interview with Emily Maitlis at the BBC on Newsnight, which is the BBC's flagship serious news discussion programme, for a full-length 1 hour interview in order to talk about it. And the interview is a total car crash, which is an expression, like a bad moment in TV. So Andrew is there attempting to brush off the allegations and give excuses and explain that he had nothing to do with any of this stuff, that he was only a casual acquaintance of Jeffrey Epstein's, really, and that he had no idea that any of these crimes were going on, and that he absolutely categorically denies that he had anything to do with the girl who's made these statements. And so this is where we talk about entitlement, because, I mean, I don't know what we can say, really, whether he doesn't do a very good job, let's say.
That's the least we can say.
He does an extremely bad job of convincing everyone that he's telling the truth in the interview. Let's say that he appears to be
A liar.
He appears to be lying through his teeth the entire time. And this is where the entitlement thing comes in, that he believes that he can go on TV and lie so badly, or appear to lie so badly, and just get away.
Exactly.
Yeah, the subtext, it felt to me, of the entire interview was like, look, I'm Prince Andrew, so
exactly.
I think that that's all you need to know, right? Don't forget, I'm Prince Andrew.
Despicable.
But some of the things he says in the interview are incredible. So one of the things, I'm talking too much here, but one of the things is that the girl described him as being incredibly sweaty.
Because they danced at a party and...
She found him disgusting.
Yeah.
They danced at a party. He was sweating profusely. And when he was in bed with her, on top of her, he was sweating profusely as well. Isn't that
you got the details.
Is that not one of the things that was said? Maybe I'm wrong about that.
I thought they just danced and she referred to that, but okay, fine.
Can I say that? Am I allowed? Do you think I can say that?
No, I wasn't there.
Maybe I'm mistaken about that one. But
you fantasized.
Maybe I made that up. I fantasized that bit. I don't know. But anyway, she described him as being very sweaty and disgusting. And I think the interviewer on the BBC interview said, "And what about these allegations of you being very sweaty?" And his response is, "Well, that can't, the sweating thing, that can't be true because," and he said, because during the Falklands War, because he did serve during the Falklands War.
We didn't talk about Margaret Thatcher at all, and the amazing performance of Gillian Anderson.
Amazing-ish. But so Andrew's excuse, that couldn't be me, because I was in the Falklands and I got shot at during the Falklands War, and because I suffered it was so traumatic that I had an adrenaline surge. And that meant that I wasn't able to sweat
anymore
for a period after it. So wait a minute, what? Because you got shot at in the Falklands conflict, you had an adrenaline surge, which meant that your body was unable to sweat. And so yes, I had like a glandular issue, which meant I couldn't sweat during that period. So that can't be me. So should we just call it a day? Like, wait a minute. That's such a weird excuse. Like, I was unable to sweat.
Maybe it's medically possible.
Maybe.
But that was a bit weird.
Maybe.
When the Pizza Express excuse as well. Yeah. I know exactly that I was in a Pizza Express with one of my daughter in... Where?
Woking.
I don't even know where that is, but... in Woking, so I can't be where you tell me I was with this girl, because I was with my daughter in Woking. And the journalist said, "How do you remember that you were in Woking in Pizza Express at this exact time?" Well, I'm Prince Andrew, as if I was going to Pizza Express every day,
Yeah,
the way he replies is sufficient. Do you say sufficient? Is above himself.
Not sufficient.
No, not sufficient. In French, we say suffisant. He's...
arrogant.
Very arrogant.
Up himself.
Like, I'm Prince Andrew. I don't often go to pizza.
Yeah. Like what he should have done in that interview. He's right at the beginning. He should have said. Should have said, "Look, can I just say that I deeply regret any association I've had with Jeffrey Epstein. That I find that the crimes he's been found guilty of and the allegations against him are deeply, deeply unsettling. And I'm very disturbed by all of it. And I'm extremely dismayed and shocked. And I also want to express my greatest sympathies and concerns to all the girls who've been affected by this. Yeah, it's absolutely terrible and awful what has happened." He didn't do that.
He had no word for the victim or alleged victim.
There was no... it was a PR disaster. He did not express one little shred of sympathy for any of the victims. In fact, he downplayed all of it. Oh, I'm Prince Andrew and I was in Pizza Express. So blah, blah, blah. So unconvincing. The body language. We watched body language.
Yeah. First, just the interview in itself is shocking. But then when you watch an analysis by a coach,
body language
coach, it's even more shocking.
Yeah.
Because you see things you can't see if you don't know. But when the guy say yes and his mind says no.
Yes.
I think everybody should watch this video or these videos of analysis of this interview, because that's horribly shocking.
I really would like to do a full episode of the interview, doing each little bit and describing his answers and looking at his body language and all of that. I just find it so fascinating.
It is.
That he is... it's just so weird as well.
Yeah.
Like his excuses. And yeah, that's the thing. Like it's like, so, you know, Prince Andrew, you say that you were not at this location when this witness says that you were there, blah blah blah. And it's like, no, I wasn't. I know exactly where I was. I was in Pizza Express with my with one of my daughters. It was I was at a party in Pizza Express, and that was that. And she's like, how do you remember exactly where you were? And his response is, well, you know, look, I'm Prince Andrew, and you know, it's pretty extraordinary for me to go to Pizza Express. And so basically he's saying, look, when I mix with ordinary people, I fucking remember it, darling, okay? Because, you know, it was so shocking to be in this grotty little shithole that I will, you know, I remember it like it was yesterday. You know, like he didn't convince anyone that he was innocent. B, he made himself look like a privileged, entitled weirdo.
Yeah.
And that was the truth that was shining through that interview. It's like, I am so privileged and so entitled, and I don't care, and I think that I can get away with this. That seemed to be what... I mean, I don't know what connection he has with Epstein. Either he was involved or he didn't know, but he should have known.
Weirdly,
or
Epstein got killed in his cell.
Epstein got killed? Well, they say that he committed suicide.
Well, there are some dodgy parts. I favour the...
When you said Epstein got killed, that was a grammatical mistake, right? You meant Epstein died. Because you can't say... Well, can you say that he was killed?
It's one of the theories.
It's one of the theories. And
I favour the theory because... Weirdly, he was on the watch, you know, because he was kind of a VIP guest in the prison. You know, like he was in the ultra protected person sector in the prison, and he was on the watch because he was so under fire with this case, and he was high profile that every hour they were checking in his cell and everything, and
to make sure that
no one attack him or he doesn't harm himself.
Right.
And I don't remember the details because I didn't know we were talking about that, so I didn't think about it. But I think there is mistakes in the report. It wasn't like watched for a period of few hours or something. Weirdly enough,
there's a little gap. There are all sorts of very, very suspicious things.
Very, very suspicious. And considering it was mingled with high-profile people like the Clintons and everything, and Prince Andrews, and
probably others that we don't know,
who were not like revealed in the press. I mean, it wouldn't be surprising. And you know what's happening now? His partner in crime,
Ghislaine
Maxwell, who got arrested a few months ago. I was reading yesterday that she can't sleep. Every 15 minutes they check on her and everything because they're scared the same thing's gonna happen, and because she's a key witness and possibly like involved in what happened, because apparently she's accused of trafficking the girls. She was helping him trafficking the girls, and so it's very dodgy, this story.
The suggestion is that with the Jeffrey Epstein thing is that the official narrative is that he committed suicide. But that lots of people believe that he was probably killed by someone, assassinated by someone, and that maybe even the security guards in the prison were in on the job, and it probably comes from a very high authority, but we don't know.
Yeah, because these kind of people, let's face it, they don't want to fall alone, you know, because there were too many charges against him and evidence, so he would have been convicted, probably. And so he wouldn't have been convicted on his own. He would have given names, and maybe he would have cut a deal to have a better, you know, like a sentence, a better
a reduced sentence or something.
If he was given like the names of his...
Yeah, basically...
It was easier to kill him.
In the mafia movies, like the Martin Scorsese movies, when a high-profile mafia guy is arrested, what does he do? You might rat on all the other mafia guys in order to avoid prison or avoid whatever. And, like in Goodfellas, Henry Hill rats all of the other mafia guys out. And he then is released in the witness protection program and stuff like that. So essentially, maybe Jeffrey Epstein, maybe they got him to prevent him from telling everyone to exactly. Or maybe Epstein felt, I don't know, maybe he did kill himself. Maybe he thought, oh my God, I'm fucked now. Like, how am I going to escape this? And he knew there was no way out. And that he didn't necessarily, maybe he didn't want everyone to get caught. He didn't necessarily want to bring the whole thing down. Maybe he, I don't know. I mean, he showed no sense of responsibility for others in his life, but maybe he did have some sense of responsibility for his friends. And I don't know. I'm just thinking about all the different possibilities. Okay. Maybe he did kill himself. Maybe he got whacked. I don't know. But anyway, the Prince Andrew thing. I don't know if I should do an episode about that interview. I don't know if it would be a good idea. Like,
if you do it, I think you should do it with a coach. Maybe the coach who did this video we watched.
Yeah.
Because the guy is very interesting, and it would be I find it fascinating. The thing you can't see when you speak to people, but if you re-see the interview, when we saw it with Andrew, because I first saw footage of the interview and I said, okay, his answers are so weird. But then when I got the analysis, wow, it brings the interview to another level.
Yeah, that's right.
So you should do that.
Yes, okay. Anyway, I mean, I don't mean to sort of, what's the word, sour the conversation by bringing that up, because we were talking about the royal family and stuff, and this is quite dark, isn't it? Really, the Prince Andrew episode. But going back to the Crown and stuff like that, I haven't seen the last episode. You have. Maybe there's time before we go to bed just to watch that.
Can I say something?
Yes. You're allowed to say your permission to speak.
Thank you. No, we criticize, or I criticize the monarchy, but because it's an interesting topic with pro and cons. But I found the Queen admirable. Yeah. I mean, it's been 60 years now? 65 years? She's the head of state, and she embodies the crown. Yeah. And she went through, so many events, historical events. She adapted, she evolved with the society, and she never ever got out of the way. She pursued the goal of her life, which is protecting and embodying the crown. Yeah. And for that, okay, she can be maybe like a bad mother or whatever. She's very admirable for that.
Yeah. Okay. It must be said that there are arguments on both sides for and against the whole system. Okay. We take those things into account, but let's just talk about the Queen and take stock of what she's done. That is absolutely amazing. And
she's 90 plus and she still works.
Yeah.
She just spent a life working. So when I say, they don't do much and everything, just because in the Crown, we see them hunting, eating, partying, complaining, watching telly.
To be honest, the crown is a bit problematic because they are playing to the crowd to an extent. Yes. They are being a bit like the Daily Mail, and they're inviting us to hate a little bit. They're inviting us to go, look at these people sitting around doing nothing. That's not the full story.
No, that's not the full story. Actually, Anne is the most hard-working royal apparently in the family. Yeah. the number of events they go to, sometimes several days and everything for charities and for... So, no, I think they do a lot.
Yeah.
If I had to just conclude on the royal family and on the Queen, I think that's actually admirable because they don't really have the choice and they embrace it. And it's imposed to them. So we can say in one way, yeah, they're privileged, but at the same time, it comes with a cost for them. And the Queen, she's absolutely admirable.
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 Yeah. Not admirable.
Okay.
Admirable. Totally stole your thunder there by doing that.
And at the same time, I totally understand like Harry's decision to just want to protect his family life and having another type of life. Because to be honest, okay, it's great to have like beautiful dresses and being invited everywhere and just not worrying about money. But at the end of the day, it doesn't look that fun. So
no, Harry and Meghan should be allowed to do what they want.
Definitely,
so what if people find them annoying, if it looks like they're virtue signalling and all that stuff? You know, who cares? Let them do what they want.
Exactly.
Stop.
And I think that the coverage they have is really unfair.
Yeah. Why is it necessary to be so cruel to them?
Cruel.
Just leave them alone. Just let them live their lives. Sure, if they've signed a Netflix deal and they're trying to do good things, let them do good things. What's wrong with that? Nothing. But going back to the Queen again, I mean, she has been absolutely unbelievable, and it's weird to bring it up, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. When the Queen finally does die, which she will do, because despite the fact that we want her to live for a long time, long live the Queen, despite that, when it does happen, it's going to be a stunning sort of moment in history. So obviously for the UK, but I think the world as well will recognise it.
London Bridge Operation.
Operation London Bridge is the code name for everything that will be done when the Queen does die. There's actually a code name for it, and there's already a sequence of events that's been planned. But the country, the UK, will stop for a day, and potentially several weeks. It will grind to a halt.
It's going to be the end of an era. Yeah. But worldwide, I think.
When I say the country will stop, I don't mean it will be the end of the UK. What I mean is that no one will do anything. Certainly for a day or two. People, I mean, let me just let me open this link here, which is an article from The Independent about what will happen when the Queen dies. Okay, I don't mean to be morbid, but it's just, I guess, a way for us to consider how significant she is. So, this is the Independent's article. What will happen when the Queen dies? The operation is known as London Bridge is Down. So, the day that Queen Elizabeth II dies will elicit a series of carefully constructed plans that have been in place since the 1960s in an operation dubbed London Bridge is Down. So, what will happen when the Queen's reign comes to an end, and how will the UK mourn the loss of its longest-standing monarch? Here's what we know so far. How will we find out? Well, the Prime Minister will be informed of the news ahead of its public release via the Queen's private secretary. He will then inform the 15 countries and 36 Commonwealth nations where the Queen is head of state. Historically, the BBC has already been told about the royal deaths ahead of other media outlets, but apparently these days the Press Association will find out about it first, and then they'll give the news to everyone else. If the Queen's death is expected, blah-de-blah-de-blah. Okay, actually, news stations, so newsrooms at the BBC and ITV and stuff, apparently they have clothes ready, appropriate clothing ready, like a black tie. The newsreaders must give the news dressed in the sombre, appropriate clothing, so they would need to wear a black tie. When the Queen Mother died, Peter Sissons, a BBC newsreader, announced the death, and he was wearing a red tie, and he was like heavily criticised for it. Probably lots of older people who are like, I found it absolutely shocking that Peter Sissons announced the death of the royal whatever. But so they're all prepared in that way. Obituaries, documentaries have already been prepared in advance. BBC will have already got video sequence that they could put on the news.
Well, there is so many things. I mean, 60 years, you have to get prepared.
She, in a sense, as a figurehead, she does represent all of this time, and it's been
she's the only one.
Yeah, it's been an incredible age in modern Britain, 1952 until today. That covers so many different moments and events and changes, and she has been the head of state throughout all of that, and she represents all those things. So it will absolutely be the end of an era.
Do you know she speaks French perfectly?
Yes, I did know that. Yeah, well done. Well, she did have the highest level of education. But other things like, I just wanted to say, other things like, for example, on the day that it happens, people will just be sent home from work. It'll basically be like, okay, go home. You can't do any work. Everyone go home. There will be a 12-day mourning period, during which time the Queen's body will be moved to Buckingham Palace, if it's not there already, and preparations will be made for the state funeral, which will be led by the Archbishop of Canterbury. Flags will fly at half-mast across the country. The London Stock Exchange will close for the funeral, as will most UK banks. So the economy will just stop for the day of the funeral, and the subsequent coronation of probably Charles. Those will be public holidays. Last time this happened, when the Queen's father, George VI, when he died, the BBC did not show any comedy on TV for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow. How did you survive, you Brit?
I don't know. So probably be a similar thing. Broadcasting schedules will be changed. No comedy on TV. And all sorts of other things like that. Charles will instantly become the monarch when she dies, even though he won't be crowned until later.
Okay, so coronation doesn't make you king.
Coronation, the Prince of Wales will become king automatically following the Queen's death, and will address the nation on the evening of her passing. The Duchess of Cornwall will become Queen Camilla.
Oh, so she's going to be Queen Camilla?
Yeah, I didn't realise that.
You told me
I thought she'd be the
royal consort.
I thought she'd be royal consort, but apparently Queen Camilla.
Wow.
I mean, they change the rules all
they change the rules, I think.
Just rules.
Oh, wow, Queen Camilla.
They're made-up rules. They're just made-up, flipping arbitrary made-up rules.
Well, they're made up to, I think, adapt. So
yeah. Charles might change his name when he becomes king, which is a thing that they do.
King Charles.
It's not a good precedent. As we heard earlier, listeners, Charles I is the one who got his head chopped off. Charles II was the one who replaced him. And so Charles, he might change his name. I wonder what he might become. He might become... He could change his name to King George. He could become George VII.
It would be so weird.
Wouldn't it?
Because we've known him... You know?
For decades.
Yeah, for decades, like Prince Charles, and suddenly he's going to be King George. Schizophrenia.
Decades.
He's around the corner.
That's right.
What about Elizabeth? She didn't change her name.
No, she didn't.
Because she was Princess Elizabeth, and she became
Queen
Elizabeth Regina.
I wonder if he will if he will stick with Charles.
So it's not compulsory to change.
No, but they just do it sometimes.
But why?
He may choose to change his name upon ascending to the throne, as royals can choose any one of their given names. Oh, so he's got...
so it's his...
He's got middle names. So this means he could be known as King Arthur.
Yeah, Arthur.
That would be amazing if he was King Arthur. Because King Arthur is a legendary, mythical king who had a magic sword and stuff like that. He could be King Philip or King George.
Maybe he'll take Philip.
Maybe
for his father.
I think it would be weird. I think, as you say, because he's been known as Charles for all this time.
Yeah.
But Charles, they say, is an unlucky name for a king in terms of history. But Charles III, maybe, and his coronation will take place a few months after the Queen's funeral. I guess that's just when it becomes public, and it's like a big public display of, hey, he's the king now, everyone. But technically he becomes king as soon as the Queen dies.
It's really real TV, this royal family.
It's real TV, but it's also
like
surreal TV, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's weird.
I really like it, looking at the story developing in front of us. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Well, That's been interesting. Listeners, I hope you've enjoyed listening to us rambling on.
Which, there is something, maybe your listeners will have a point of view on that. How come you have several like royal families in the world? Why this one? Why is this one is so unique? You see, why this one attracts so much attention?
Do you think it was like that before Queen Victoria? Do you think it was like that before the British Empire? It must be because of the British Empire, surely. Because, in a sense, like the British monarchy has been exported around the world. It's not just in terms of the Commonwealth, but just because of the days when the British Empire was in line with sort of modernity and globalization. Those things went hand in hand with British colonialism, and so the British royal family was the first international royal family.
Yeah, but you have like the King of Spain, or in Belgium, in Denmark. Spain is kind of a high profile, you know?
Yeah.
But still, you can't compare.
I don't know.
Oh, you have Monaco a bit, like on Monaco.
Are there other royal families,
Albert,
like Sweden? No, they've got royalty, haven't they? But yeah,
it's not the same.
It's not the same scope.
When you say the royal family,
the
Queen, you know who you refer to.
Yes, it's interesting. It's interesting the reasons why. Well, it's certainly fascinating stuff. Right, I'm going to watch the final episode of season 4 before going to bed. Do you want to watch it with me?
Maybe.
Or is it sleepy time now?
It's okay now. Yeah. Saturday night.
Yeah. Woo, party time.
Well, party time in lockdown. No? So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking to me on the podcast again. How do you feel about the episode?
Well, I don't know. I wasn't fully prepared. So I don't know. Maybe it wasn't logical and in order, but we'll see.
I think it was typically meandering and rambling, but that's normal for this podcast.
Well, I hope I didn't make too many mistakes.
I don't know. I think...
and I hope my French accent isn't too strong for your listeners.
There's always one, isn't there? There's always one person. You shouldn't... Her French accent is so strong. Oh, get out. Get a life.
Yeah, that was a little reminder.
It's just...
that I read the comments and I know what to say.
Just bear in mind, listeners, if you suddenly feel compelled to jump into the comments section, most of you are like, "This is fine."
Oh yeah.
But there's always one person. If you are that one person who feels compelled to jump in and say some comment about how my wife's English is not equivalent to that of the Queen, then just think twice, okay? Because that's my wife you're talking about there.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, my English is better than your French, so that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I can cope with 1 or 2 comments, and most of the comments that you said are absolutely lovely, so that's fine.
Yes, exactly. Okay, well, that's enough that we've got time for. Thank you for your lovely contribution.
Thank you.
So, there you are. That is our very long conversation about The Crown. There's nothing more for me to add here, really, except these things. So, questions. What do you think about all of this? I mean, about the royal family and all that stuff. Do you feel sympathy for the individual members of the family? Have you seen The Crown? What do you think of it? Also, we didn't talk much about Margaret Thatcher, played in this series by Gillian Anderson, who first became known for playing Scully in The X-Files. We're fans of Gillian Anderson, and my wife thinks her performance in the show was great. I'm not so sure. I kind of partially agree with her. I think anyway, I can't talk about it too much more now because I don't want the episode to go on forever. Basically, we couldn't cover everything in this conversation, and although we wanted to talk more about Thatcher and Gillian Anderson, we just didn't have time. And finally, what do you think? Should I do an episode all about the Prince Andrew interview on the BBC? The infamous Prince Andrew interview. Should I do an episode about that? Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. A couple of reminders. Premium Lepsters, check out the app and the website for the latest premium episodes. And if you'd like to sign up, just go to teacherluke.co.uk/premium info. Wisbolep, that's why I should be on Luke's English podcast, the competition. I will be revealing the results and talking about what happens next in a forthcoming episode soon. Okay, so hold tight, hold your horses, and watch this space for all of the details about that. Okay, right, so I will speak to you again on the podcast soon, but for now, this is the end of this super long episode. Okay, and all that is left for me to say is goodbye. Bye, 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 bye. Thanks for listening to Luke's English podcast. For more information, visit teacherluke.co.uk.